वेलकम बैक नाजरीन। मौसम ने तेवर बदली है तो मैं ज़रूर मौसम के हवाले से बात करना चाहता हूँ और आलमी सतह पर क्या हो रहा है। पेरिस में यानी फ्रांस में हालिया दिनों में आलमी सरबराही कॉन्फ्रेंस भी हुई जिसमें वज़ीर आज़म पाकिस्तान शरीक हुए। इस हवाले से बात करने के लिए हमारे रूबरू हैं पाकिस्तान में तैनात फ्रांस के सफ़ीर हिज एक्सेलेंसी निकोला गैले। एक्सेलेंसी, थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर स्पेयरिंग टाइम।
Thank you for having me.
Paris summit provided an opportunity for the world leaders to talk on climate. It was a big gathering. Prime Minister of Pakistan was also there. How to make the world fulfill its commitment at these summits?
Well, that's a very important question, and that was exactly the objective of the summit, which, as you said, was a big gathering with more than 40 heads of state and government in Paris. As you remember, in 2015, there was already an important, major event in Paris regarding climate change, the so-called Paris Agreement. And after many years, it appeared that although everybody had agreed to this accord, the implementation needs certainly to be reviewed, in particular on the financial aspect of it. And as President Macron said in opening this big gathering, no country should have to choose between development and fighting and protecting the planet.
Exactly.
Although it has appeared to be sometimes a very difficult choice for many countries, in particular developing countries, in particular vulnerable countries, and Pakistan is both. That's why the idea of the president, and I think the idea of all those who came to Paris, was to find solutions. How to accommodate those two objectives, which should not be contradictory but complementary, fighting poverty and protecting the planet. So it was not a summit aiming at announcing big contributions, although there were some important announcements, especially from multilateral banks, nearly $200 billion for particularly development and green development. But it was really a discussion between all kinds of players, of course, governments, including, as you said, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, but also other kind of stakeholders, businesses, scientists, civil society, international organizations, so that they could put on the table all the aspects, all the challenges they are facing, which are not the same from one continent to another.
Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif also held a meeting with the French President, His Excellency Emmanuel Macron. What is the forward movement in Pakistan-France relationship?
Well, as you know, they met already during the UN General Assembly. But before that in New York, during the UN General Assembly in September 2022. And it was, of course, a very positive meeting and very good opportunity for the President and the Prime Minister to meet. But unfortunately, it was just after the tragic floods you had in Pakistan the months before. And as you may remember, on this occasion, the President and the Prime Minister announced this Geneva, well, at the time it was not for sure in Geneva, but this international conference to help and support Pakistan. And the conference was held, as you know, in Geneva in last January. It was a very successful event for Pakistan. A lot of solidarity was shown, and a lot, in this case, of concrete contributions, including from France. But also, and obviously, they discussed bilateral relations, which have been very much improving in the last 18 months, I would say, through a lot of cooperation that have been renewed or relaunched. I'm thinking of many different fields. In the field of agriculture, for instance, Pakistan is one of the largest milk producer, and how to improve this industry, how to make products from milk, is something that French industries have some experience in. You may have heard of our, cheeses, for instance. And this is exactly the kind of very practical cooperation we would like to have in the economic field, associating governments, of course, but also companies. We have very big companies in the agri-food sector. And that I'm working very much on this, both with the federal government and also with some provincial government in Pakistan. I would like also to mention the number of Pakistani students who had become very limited, very low in the last years, but now it's increasing a lot thanks to many additional scholarships that we're offering to Pakistani students, and also through the EU program called Erasmus Plus.
The largest number from Pakistan for this year.
Well, France has the largest number of Pakistani students, that's 50, but also Pakistan is the first beneficiary of this program in the world.
Erasmus program.
Yeah. So that also is very important to establish links between young people, and that's certainly very promising for the future.
The Paris summit was also very contributive towards Pakistan's economic scenario. Although Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif also met Saudi Crown Prince and the Prime Minister, His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman, then he also met with the Chinese Premier, the German Chancellor. But Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif's meeting with the MD IMF, Ms. Georgieva, contributed toward the final agreement, which is still, with IMF going on. How, Excellency, you see about the economic situation while sitting in Pakistan, about Pakistan?
Well, a lot of important developments have happened since the Paris summit and these meetings, and certainly these meetings between the Prime Minister and Mr. Georgieva have helped a lot. We are very happy that the agreement could finally be reached between Pakistan and the IMF. We supported that very much.
They have already done with staff level agreement.
Yeah, and then now you have a temporary agreement, which means that the machine and the relationship between IMF and Pakistan is on the best possible track. And that is, of course, very good for Pakistan. You were asking me about the economic situation of Pakistan. It's no secret that it's a difficult situation. And that's why this agreement gives a lot of hope because of the financial contribution it will bring to Pakistan, of course, but also from IMF, but also from other countries, hopefully. And that is also very important in terms of increasing attractivity and confidence in the Pakistani economy, and at the end of the day, to also attract more investors from the rest of the world. So we are very happy that these producive meetings were held in Paris. I understand also there was a phone call after these meetings between the Prime Minister and Mrs. Georgieva. And again, we are very, very happy for Pakistan that the agreement, after many months and weeks and negotiations and sometimes fear of that it would not be conclusive. Finally, we had a success, and it's a collective success.
So we are talking about economic situation of Pakistan. Pakistan is already out of FATF, Financial Action Task Force, from grey to no grey area. Now
and this is something on which we work very well bilaterally with Pakistan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then IMF plan is about to be signed and approved by the executive board. But what about the GSP plus status for Pakistan from the European Union?
So that's, of course, a completely different subject, although there can be some interactions. But the GSP plus is a scheme that is that has been signed by the European Union for all its member states and 8 other countries in the world, including Pakistan, which is, again, number one in terms of as a beneficiary country of this GSP plus, and it has considerably increased the exports of Pakistani products to Europe, and particularly in the crucial sector of textile in Pakistan. So we very much hope that because we are at the end of the first program, so a new one has to be agreed between the European Union and Pakistan. The negotiation again is conducted by the European Union and Pakistan, not by member states of the European Union. We very much support a successful negotiation between the two. There is a new element of procedure compared with the first program, which is that the European Parliament now has a role, an important role, because it has to approve the agreement reached by the two parties. So that's, of course, a new element that has to be taken into account. But again, this is extremely beneficiary for Pakistan, for your industries, for your development, for employment in this country, and we fully support a successful negotiation.
Welcome back, Nadreen. I will take advantage of your presence, Excellency. Something that happened in the European continent, Wagner Group threatened President Putin but receded. But what do you think, Excellency, will be the impact on European continent, your continent, where Ukraine is already bleeding?
Well, As you can understand, I will not comment on internal Russian questions as an envoy in Pakistan. What I can say and state and restate is our very clear position on Ukraine, and these recent events does not affect that by any means. That is, the invasion of Ukraine was a unprovoked, unjustifiable action from Russia that was condemned by an overwhelming majority of member states of the United Nations several times. We are supporting Ukraine and the Ukrainians. We are helping them to protect and defend their country, and we will continue to, to do so as long as necessary, as President Macron said many times, and many of our allies in this regard have said exactly the same way. And also we are very attentive to humanitarian aid. It's not only military aid, because the Ukrainian population is suffering a lot. We also welcomed a lot of Ukrainian refugees in France. And finally, that has been a constant preoccupation for French diplomacy. We are always concerned by fighting against impunity, and we will certainly also support all actions from the international institutions in this regard.
Excellency, you talked about various fields of cooperation between France and Pakistan. How to boost further the cooperation between Pakistan and France in diverse fields?
Well, I mentioned some examples before, and we are working on this every day here at the embassy with the Pakistani.
And you have made a difference, Excellency. The relationship is now upward. Trajectory is going up.
Well, thank you very much, but I don't think that one person alone can do this, and it's because also there was a very clear will and willingness from the Pakistani side. It's starting to produce some effects. I mentioned the number of students Pakistani students going to France bilaterally or through the Erasmus program. I mentioned this interest we have in agriculture. We certainly have to do more in terms of economic relations. Certainly, as we mentioned before, the economic situation of the country needs to be more attractive for foreign investors. But we are doing what we can as government to convince French companies to invest in Pakistan or to export more to Pakistan, as also we would be very happy to have Pakistani investment in France. At the end of the day, economic relations are between private companies, and even if we can help, give information, and really show all the potential of this country, a very large population, young population, very talented entrepreneurs and scientists and researchers and business community.
A great natural resource, big country.
Yeah, absolutely. So the potential is there. And our job as government is, of course, to show all this potential to French investors. At the end of the day, the decision is the choice of a company on the basis of their own analysis of the economy, of the economic environment. And this is something, of course, government cannot have an influence on. But we are giving the information, and we are doing that in full cooperation with the Pakistani authorities, also with the Pakistani embassy in Paris. And I have good hope that because we expect an improvement of the economic situation in Pakistan because of this IMF agreement and all the consequences this agreement will have, we believe that the attractivity of the economic environment here will improve, and that will certainly be noted by foreign companies, including French companies.
Excellency, you rightly pointed out the investment, attraction of investment. In recent weeks, a high-level investment facilitation council has been constituted here. It already had 2 meetings. This includes Chief of Army Staff of Pakistan, General Asim Munir Syed, as well. How France or French companies or Your Excellency feels encouraged about such a council to guarantee the continuity, sustainability for more and more investment in Pakistan?
Well, I would say that it's precisely for that kind of body to encourage investors, because the fact that I am encouraged or not, it doesn't have a lot of effect on that kind of decision.
The message has to be conveyed partly.
But if there is a new body with very influential persons, of course, as you mentioned, and that improve the the procedures and the environment, the economic environment for investors, that is, of course, very positive. And we will certainly be happy to, cooperate with this body as long as they are interested.
Pakistan is already in the pre-monsoon days nowadays, but the damage is done because of last year rains in the monsoon. They have still not been met, and the commitments made in Geneva conference, they are not fulfilled. How to ensure that the world, the major powers, the major donors, they fulfill those commitments announced at Geneva conference?
Well, I would disagree a little bit, saying that they're not fulfilled. They're not entirely fulfilled.
Yeah.
But after all, it's less than a year. The first good point is that this conference was held, and I recall the circumstances where this conference was decided, in which President Macron participated live. There were a lot of financial commitments from governments, also from international financial organizations, yes, international banks in particular. On the French side, as you may remember, there was a decision to dedicate most of our development aid to Pakistan, and that's about 4 million euros to precisely sustainable development in the perspective, unfortunately, of other events of that kind. God forbid, but that may happen. And as you also may remember, there were two very specific actions from the French government after this floods. Was an immediate humanitarian support, when we brought, of course, a lot of humanitarian aid, but also people came from France, and that France was one of the very rare countries that sent experts here to Pakistan. And then there is a more long-term action from France. One was announced in Geneva, and part of it is now channeled through UN agencies, okay, which are doing an extremely remarkable job here, in particular UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and the World Food Programme, yes, to which to these two organizations, and also some NGOs working in Pakistan, French NGOs. In total, we have given contribution that amount to 10 million euros, and if needed, because we know that it's a long-term process after such a major disaster, we will certainly be ready to consider additional support.
That's a very warm welcome announcement or warm welcome commitment, Excellency. Thank you very much for sparing time. नाज़रीन, फ्रांस के सफ़ीर एक्सेलेंसी निकोला गैले की बातचीत आपने सुनी। अच्छी बात है कि वो IMF के मुआहदे के बारे में बड़े पुरुमीद हैं कि इससे पाकिस्तान में ना सिर्फ मुआशी सूरत हाल बेहतर होगी, बल्कि जो बैरूनी सरमायाकारी है उसके लिए भी अट्रैक्शन और इंसेंटिव पैदा होंगे। अपने मेज़बान शौकत पराजा को इजाज़त दीजिए। खुदा हाफिज़।